A very warm good morning to all of you. Dear students, once again I would like to welcome all of you to a new session of the Civics class. Today we are going to begin with a new chapter, chapter number 4, the Supreme Court, part 1. From the title itself, it will be very clear about the subject matter of our class. Of course, today we are going to discuss about the judiciary system of our country. Secondly, we will be discussing about single integrated system. What is meant by single integrated system? And finally, we will be discussing about the need for a single independent judiciary. So these are the three different points which we will be discussing in today's class. So without wasting time, let's move to the class. The judiciary. We have a judiciary which is a single integrated system of courts. In our country, we have a judiciary. Of course, you might be knowing from different medias and other social media platforms. Every day we are getting different updations from our judiciary. Especially, we can say like the different news related to the Supreme Court and the different high courts. We have a judiciary and it is a well-established judiciary. And one of the main speciality of this judiciary is that it is a single integrated system of courts. What is meant by single integrated system of courts? Though there are number of courts, all the courts will be functioning under the strict guidance or the rules and regulations of our constitution. Okay, same rules and regulations will be applied to the different courts in our country. That's what is generally meant by single integrated system of courts. For the union and the states, the Supreme Court at the apex, which means our judiciary becomes complete with the support of union government, state government and Supreme Court. Or in other words, it can be considered like a triangle. In one point there is union government, on the other point there is different states, and finally on the last point there will be Supreme Court. So when these three different agencies or three different organs join together, there will be an effective judiciary in our country. Okay, so these are the basis or the basic information regarding the judiciary of our country. Now let's move to the next point, that is single integrated system. What is meant by single integrated system? The Supreme Court is the head of the entire system. As we have already seen, there are a number of courts in our country. So there must be an agency or there must be an institution which can take up the responsibility of the entire system. And in the case of our judiciary, we have Supreme Court, and Supreme Court takes up the responsibility of the entire system. Supreme Court is not just supervises but also exercises control over the functioning of other courts. So the duty and responsibility of Supreme Court is not just to supervise the activities of the different courts, but they have also got the power to exercise control over. Suppose, just imagine if a high court made a wrong verdict or they have violated certain rules and regulations while making a verdict. In such cases, Supreme Court can declare whether the verdict is valid or invalid. Okay, so they can exercise control over the functioning of other courts. There are no separate sets of laws. Okay, so this is what is the actual meaning of the word single integrated system. No separate sets of laws, but a single civil and criminal system operates throughout the country. So I think it will be very clear to you right now. So The entire system is controlled by the Supreme Court, and they are not only supervises but also exercise control over the functioning of other courts. There are no separate sets of laws, but all the different courts are functioning under a single civil and criminal system which applicable throughout the country, or which operates throughout the country. And one more point is there, all cases coming from the lower courts can be taken to the High Court and maximum up to the Supreme Court by way of appeal. Okay, so from the lowest level, from the criminal court or the civil court, from there the district court, then High Court. So from different level, from the lowest level to the highest level, we can move if we haven't got justice properly. Suppose just imagine we have filed a case in the district court, and from the district court we haven't got justice. There we can move to the High Court, and from High Court we haven't got justice, we can move to the Supreme Court. So all cases coming from the lower courts can be taken to the High Court. And from High Court, maximum up to where we can go? Maximum up to the Supreme Court. And from High Court, we can move to the Supreme Court by way of appeal. So this is what actually meant by single integrated system. In the whole country, we have one rules and regulations which will be equally applicable to all the people, to all the courts, and they will be making sure that the citizens of our country is getting justice. Then below the Supreme Court, there are number of high courts in different states, or high courts of different states and different subordinate courts which will be functioning under the high courts of that particular state. So here it will be clear to you, I think. At the top we have Supreme Court. Supreme Court will be managing all the activities of high courts as well as the subordinate courts. And in different states there are high courts, and high courts will be taking care about the rules and regulations or the activities of the different subordinate courts which will be functioning under the particular high court within the jurisdiction or within the geographical area of that particular state. Now we are going to discuss the next point, or the last point, that is about the need for a single independent judiciary. Why we must have a single independent judiciary? That's what we are going to discuss finally. India has opted for single integrated judicial setup because India has opted for single integrated judiciary, independent judiciary. Why? First point, in a representative democracy, special significance in view of the rights of individuals. Okay, we are electing our own rulers. Or in other words, in a democratic system, people are deciding who has to rule them. So in such a representative democratic country, special importance is given to the rights of individuals, or special support is given to the fundamental rights of the people or the citizens of that country. So to protect and support the rights of the individual, we must have a single independent judiciary. Why? Especially protection against executive or legislative interference. Executive means, we have already studied these particular points when we were dealing with the parliamentary system of our country. What is meant by executive, what is meant by legislative, and what is meant by judiciary, the three different organs of our country. This protection is given by making the judiciary independent of the other two organs of the government. Which are the two different organs of the government? Legislative and executive. So, in order to safeguard the rights of the individuals or the citizens of our country, we have opted single integrated judicial setup. So, the first point is very clear to you, right? In a representative democracy, special significance or special support or safety is given to the rights of the individuals, which is especially to protect the peoples from the interference of the executive as well as legislature. Okay. The second point says that an independent and supreme judiciary is also an essential requirement of a federal governance. Do you remember we have already studied about what is meant by federal government, federal setup? How many of you are remembering it? Actually, federal setup means the power has got divided between center and state. Okay, the power has got divided between center and states. Do you remember about the different list? State list, union list and concurrent list. I think it will be very clear to you right now. So in the federal setup, the judiciary must be free. Otherwise, what will happen? In the decentralization of power, there will be number of problems because the state will be asking for more power and the center will be using the extra power to control the states. So number of problems can raise. In order to avoid those kinds of problems, we must have a judiciary which will be free from all other clutches. Constitutional division of powers between the executive, legislature and judiciary, because the power divided between all these three different organs can become an issue if we don't have an independent judiciary. Third point says that an independent and impartial judiciary is an essential requisite for ensuring human rights and protecting democracy. Because whenever there is or wherever there is an independent judiciary, they will be always standing for the rights of the citizens of the country. So, in order to safeguard the fundamental rights of the citizens of the country as well as protecting democracy, our country must have an independent and impartial judiciary. So, these are the three different reasons behind the independent judiciary system in our country. So dear students, these points are very clear to you, I think. So today we are winding up this particular topic here and we will continue with the remaining points in the next class. Till then, I would like to sign off. Thank you.